Before the contest began, we drew for speaking order. If you have a ballot, and of course for judges' purposes, here is tonight's speaking order. Speaker number 1, Colin McKechnie. Colin McKechnie will be our first speaker. Speaker number 2, Tricia Grunnerud. Tricia Grunnerud will be our second speaker. Speaker number 3, Scott Nutter. Scott Nutter will be our third contestant. Speaker number 4, Dan Cohen. Dan Cohen will be speaker number 4. Speaker number 5, Donnie Crandall. Donnie Crandall will be our fifth contestant. Speaker number 6, Beverly Adams. Beverly Adams will be speaker number 6. Speaker number 7, Arnold Kunst. Arnold Kunst will be speaker number 7. Speaker number 8, Adam Burrell. Adam Burrell will be our 8th speaker. Speaker number 9 is Russ Steele. Russ Steele will be the 9th contestant tonight. As a reminder to our contestants, when we get within a minute or 2 or 3 of the previous contestant wrapping up, or possibly during the break before, please make sure you are outside those double doors there getting mic'd up. We do have a 2-mic system, so we can mic you up as the previous speakers are still speaking. Mr. Chief Judge, is your judging team ready?
Ready.
Mr. Chief Timer, is your timing team ready?
Ready.
Let the contest begin. Our first contestant, Colin McKechnie, Colin's Canine Catastrophe. Colin's Canine Catastrophe, Colin McKechnie.
Brum, 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 brum. Every morning as I drove to work, this crazy local half-breed mongrel would attack my car, snapping and biting at the tires. And I'm a peaceful, animal-loving, live and let live kind of person. So I ignored the dumb brute until the morning he bit my baby girl right in the face. No more peaceful person at all, and definitely no live and let live. The war had begun. So the next time he attacked my car, I swerved towards him. He swerved away. I swerved violently towards him. He swerved violently away, turned and smiled. I hunched over in the seat, got the door ready. And this time as I swerved towards him, I swung the door as hard as I could right towards the back of his head. He ducked and kept on running. I hitched further over in the seat, got the door ready, swerved towards him, and this time swung the door as hard as I can, and as he ducked, I swung a mighty boot right towards his nether region. He accelerated, and I missed and fell out of the car. All except my right foot that was still on the gas pedal. So off we went down the road, the car in the lead, Colin bringing up a close second, and the dog in the rear chewing at my ear. Fortunately, a large tree stopped the procession. On the way back from the hospital, my wife said, "Colin, leave the dog alone. It's far more intelligent than you." But one battle does not a war complete. So I already had my next plan ready. I bought a big cage, put some food in it. It worked. 14 cats, 7 dogs, and a wabbit. But not the hound from Hades. So I got some poison. Had to be more effective. It was. My wife's cat was sick for weeks. And so, by a strange coincidence, was my love life. Next, I got a large telegraph pole, hoisted it up on a rope, attached a tripwire. It was absolutely unbeatable. I'd calculated the radius of the angle, the dynamics of acceleration, the fundamentals of what it was going to do to him when it got him. It worked. My mother-in-law will probably never visit us again when she gets out of hospital. Next, I was sat at home watching a Tarzan movie. And I saw that in the jungle, to catch large wild animals, they dig a big pit, put sharpened stakes in it, covered it with grass. It looked perfect. I ran down to the front lawn, dug it up, put in my stakes, covered it all in grass, and waited. Early the next morning, I heard that wonderful sound. Ow! 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 I rushed down, and there he was, the mailman. Next, I got a bear trap. Zhazhang, a big bear trap. Couldn't fail, and it didn't. I got the lawyer from the post office delivering my summons. I decided this was going to take more intelligence. So, having checked my policy manual, I'd already noted that I'd filled my quantity of people into the hospital for the year. So I looked for another safe method, and I went back to my cage. I set it up, and over time, 27 cats, 43 dogs, and the snotty-nosed little brat from next door, but not the hound from Hades, until one wonderful morning. I go out, and there he is in the cage. I lifted the cage, put it in the back of my little boat, connected up to my car, headed straight for the ocean, launched the boat. 3 miles I went straight out, heading for this little island. And I was having such a wonderful day. I was singing at the top of my voice. Bad dog, who you going to call? Who you going to call now that I've got you? He turned and looked away and put his paws over his ears. Obviously not a fan of good music. 100 yards from the beach, I lifted the cage, opened the door, and shook his sorry hide out. He hit the water, turned with a nasty snarl, and started swimming for the beach. Well, not swimming the way we do. What do they call this in America? Oh, how appropriate. So I turned and started back for shore. It was such a wonderful day, I decided to stop and fish. And I'd only been fishing for about 10 minutes, and this great big grey ship with red stripes down the side come bearing straight towards me. And as I looked up, this tall, burly figure was stood up at the front of it. And he shouted, "Hey, fella, this is your lucky day." I said, "It is?" He said, "Yes, your dog fell overboard, and we rescued him for you." That's the Toastmaster.
Contestant number 2, Tricia Grunerud. Date.com, a family affair. Date.com, a family affair. Tricia Grunerud.
One Saturday morning, a few years ago, I found my single self rather pathetically shuffling around my kitchen in my fuzzy slippers, talking to my dogs. "Good morning, darlings. Let me grab a cup of coffee, and then I want to hear all about your night." It wasn't the fact that I was talking to my dogs that concerned me. We all do that, right? It was absolutely the fact that I was formulating entire conversations with them. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests, I had become complacent, and I needed help. That very next Monday morning, I gathered the strength and the courage that I needed to ask for that help. With a heavy heart and trembling hands, I picked up the phone and I scheduled an appointment with my hairstylist. We had been together for so long she could sense the urgency of the situation. That next week, I found myself in the chair, bearing my soul to the best darn therapist I had ever had. And as I knew she would, she had what she thought was the perfect idea. Online dating, of course. I, however, was not at all convinced this was a good idea, and I told her so. However, after a recap of my trust issues and a little encouragement, I left with touched-up roots and a plan. Now, fellow Toastmasters, I don't know if any of you have had the privilege of single-parenting 2 teenage boys, but I knew this plan of mine was never going to work if I didn't make it a family affair. To say that conversation was uncomfortable and awkward would be the understatement of the century. However, being of the technologically savvy generation, it wasn't that far out of their comfort zone. So we settled on a couple of ground rules. First, they would need to view and approve my profile. And second, my best friend would need to have my logon so that she could help me with the screening process. As comfortable routines will go, I settled into mine quite nicely. And one evening, after dinner, I sat on the couch, settling into my spot for my date. Ice cream bowl perched on the arm, laptop on the lap, fuzzy slippers on the feet. And my oldest son walked into the room, and he just stared at me. I looked up at him and I said, "What?" "Mom, I've been thinking, and I'm just going to say it, but this guy that you've been talking to, you're probably going to have to get off the couch at some point and meet him." Really? I looked up at him and I said, "Why?" Well, as fate would have it, the evening did come when I received the invitation. And I panicked, and I must have done so out loud because both of the boys came running into the room and they said, "Mom, what's the matter?" And I said, "Oh, let me tell you what's the matter. He wants to meet in person for a date." Do you know my youngest son actually had the nerve to look at me and say, "Mom, I think this might be the next step." Oh, son, then please allow me to clarify something for you. This is called online dating, honey. And that's exactly what I am doing. I am online dating, and it's really working for me. I was getting no support from these two, none. So I did the only mature thing. I didn't answer him. That's right, I shut down my laptop. I cut off all form of communication for 48 hours so he could think long and hard about what he was doing. All right. A couple of days later, I decided that perhaps I had been a tad bit hasty. After consulting with my hairstylist several times, I decided to send out a half-hearted email letting him know that if he were remotely still interested, I may consider a brief meeting. Remarkably, he was still interested. So one Saturday morning, we met for a very public walk in a very public park. We walked and we talked for a long time, and I was actually enjoying myself and trying very hard to ignore the constant vibrating of my cell phone in my pocket. Halfway through our walk, I noticed a restroom and excused myself. I sauntered casually into the restroom, slammed the door, locked myself in a stall, pulled out my cell phone and began to read. From my youngest, "Mom, how's it going?" From my oldest, "Mom, everything going okay?" From my youngest again, "Mom, you're not answering us and we're getting worried." And from my best friend, "I'm the one in the dark hat and sunglasses down by the water." I took a mad minute to dash back a couple of messages to my oldest. "Son, I'm fine. I'll call you pretty soon. Please tell your brother." And to my best friend, "Oh, you really better be kidding." She was not kidding. Fellow Toastmasters, I learned something very valuable at the tender age of 43. I learned that great relationships are not about perfection. They are about family, and friendship. And I learned that man was just crazy enough to want to spend his life with me. One Saturday morning a few weeks ago, I found my no longer single self shuffling around my closet, searching for my fuzzy slippers, when my cell phone rang. I glanced at my phone that was on my dresser and saw that it was my best friend. I put her on speaker and continued my search. Her voice rang through the confines of my closet, and she said, "Tricia, I've decided that I am ready to start my adventure in online dating, and I'm really nervous. Will you please help me?" "Of course," I said. "Of course I'll help you." When do we get started, Mr. Toastmaster?
Contestant number 3, Scott Nutter. Tall, dark, and handsome. Tall, dark, and handsome, Scott Nutter.
Tall, dark, and handsome. This has long been held as the gold standard of which the attractiveness of a male is evaluated. You are an astute audience. In the brief time that I've been up here, you have already surmised that I, Scott Nutter, did not hit the trifecta in the tall, dark, and handsome lottery. Fellow Toastmasters, distinguished Toastmasters, and guests, I was not given height. But I was given other gifts, many, many, many gifts, one of which is the ability to read minds. And right now, I can read the mind of this audience, and it has one singular thought that is so thick, it is palpable, I can see it clearly as the light of day. Every single one of you is thinking, "Scott, be happy. You got 2 out of 3. Thank you for that compliment. Come tell me after the contest. Here's what I know about this tall, dark, and handsome continuum. Not all of the components are weighted equally. Tall is first because it is exponentially more helpful for a man in getting along in this world. This came to me early in life. I was the smallest guy in my elementary school class, and I was rather bummed out about it. My mom, she realized I would never be this tall, lumbering oaf roaming this planet, came up to me and said, "Scotty, remember one thing. Good things come in small packages." That's a Hall of Fame mom statement right there. I was giddy. I took my newfound, brimming confidence straight to the playground, where not too long after, a big kid got a hold of me. He didn't like me much. He says, "Shorty, I'm going to knock your block off." I said, "No, you're not. Good things come in small packages." Biff! Down I went. Now I know I'm in a fight over my lack of height. And I also knew the rules of fisticuffs. You are never to strike another male below the belt line. So I took square aim as I got up, and I caught him squarely south of the border, and as he doubled up in pain, I said, "Sorry, dude, Shorty just can't reach no higher." This was my introduction to the world of height discrimination. In the late 90s, I was about 38 years old, online dating hit the scene. I said I'd try it out. Look, here's all these gals, 5 foot, 5'2", 5'4". And then I looked at the requirements. They all wanted 5'10", 6 feet tall or more. Clearly, the bus has missed a couple of stops here. I now needed to investigate this outbreak of giraffe envy that had overcome the land. So I wrote to them. "I know we're not a match, but could you tell me what you used to establish your criteria?" I got a lot of answers, and I'll share one with you. This lady was 32 years old, diminutive, and she said, "My older brothers, they're all tall. So is my dad. if I brought home a short boyfriend, they would ridicule him unmercifully. I wrote back to her. Thank you very much for your candor and for the free ticket out of your family's dysfunction. Dodged a bullet there. But what I came to realize through this process was 5'9" is the average height of a male. Now these women had spent time, resources, money, because they have a desperate void to fill in their life, a vacuum. Yet with that one criteria, they've eliminated 50% of their dating pool. And then walked over to the other end of the pond where everybody else is fishing. And the term, there's nothing so uncommon as common sense, comes to mind. And I also realized none of those ladies tonight are in Las Vegas setting odds on tomorrow's football games. Finally, why is it that when a tall man asserts himself, he's bold, he's positive, he's a leader? But when a vertically challenged guy does it, he's got Napoleon complex, short man syndrome. Why is there no term for a tall guy that screws up being tall? There is now. Doofus disease. And it's rampant. I know this guy, 6'2". Absolutely the most horrible person in the world. That's separate from my story. He's got a good physique. As a matter of fact, he's my age. He has to eat copious amounts of food or he loses weight. Cry for me, Argentina. He's dark, and I would consider him somewhat handsome if it wasn't for that rug he wears on his head. This is the doofus part. Why is a 6'2" guy covering up a bald spot? It's not like anybody can see up there. I mean, if anybody should be wearing a toupee, it's me! Friends, the world is not going to tolerate discrimination much longer. We're having riots. Black lives matter. Blue lives matter. The LGBT community has fought for their rights. Women are rapping at that glass ceiling, and they will deservedly get their equal pay. Who's going to stand up for the guy that can't reach the top shelf in the grocery store? Will you rise for the unrisen? Look, I'll take this whole cause on myself and lead it, but I can't do it alone because my efforts, I think, by myself would just come up a little, you know. All I ask friends to join the fight is next time you come across somebody that's below average in height, look at them in a different way. Realize all the obstacles they've had to crawl under and embrace the words of that wise old sage. Good things, if not the best things, come in small packages. Thank you, sir.
Our fourth contestant, Dan Cohen, my third, fifth birthday party. My third, fifth birthday party, Dan Cohen.
How many of you have ever taken a test and when it was done you just knew that you had aced it? That was me at my third, fifth birthday party. The trilogy of fifth birthday parties, my parents will tell you, was a insane, ill-conceived, bacchanal event that spanned multiple days, several parties, and entirely divergent sets of kids. My first fifth birthday party was a field trip to see Walt Disney's Fantasia that had just been re-released, and my mother got lost in her 1978 Nissan Datsun with 6 kids screaming in the backseat stacked up like firewood. My second fifth birthday party was in a driving snowstorm at my dad's house in February. And I don't remember much else about that party, but I do remember that I was furious that he had invited Michael Diamond. because Michael Diamond was my enemy. My nemesis, the Lex Luthor to my Superman. And here he was in my fortress of solitude. But it was my third fifth birthday party that forever changed how I would see the world and molded my sense of what is fair for years to come. My mother, you see, has always been a more like I am fun kind of person, and my third fifth birthday party was a quintessentially mom event. Crafts were crafted, songs were sung, and there was a game of Twister so epic that it has forever since been known as the Battle of Left Foot Green. And then there was the dance contest. The prize for which was the most glorious prize imaginable, a giant, and I mean giant jar of jelly beans. I can still see those glittering, sugary jewels now. And the contest went like this. There would be 2 heats of dance contest, and the winners of each would be moved on to the final round, where we would dance for the jelly beans. And I don't remember what the other kids danced to, but my group, we danced to Cyndi Lauper's Girls Just Want to Have Fun. I don't want to brag, but those other kids had no shot. I tore it up. Folks, that first round of dance contest, I firmly believe, cemented me and my legacy in the pantheon of great dancers of our time. Of all time, really. You know those moments in movies where there's a montage of people just kind of doing their thing, and suddenly there's this ripple, and everyone in all those different places just stops because they sense something miraculous has happened. That was me in that first round of dance contest. And needless to say, I moved on to the final round along with my best friend, Robbie Ray Roberts, another kid I went to school with, Neat Red Bell, and a girl that I only vaguely remember as being a girl at my third, fifth birthday party. My mother started the music, and the familiar chords of Michael Jackson's Beat It started. And the great dance began. Oh, you want me to dance, but I don't want to split my pants. All I can say, folks, is that in dark corners of Cincinnati, Ohio, legends are still whispered in hushed tones about the boy with the feet of gold. About the 5-year-old who danced with the angels upon the earth. And when that dance ended, I looked at my opponents and they knew they had been beaten. Oh, sure, they put up a brave front, but it was like a boxer after a match who raises his hand in victory even though he knows that he has been bested by a superior opponent. And I was already counting my wins when my mother brought us all back to the center of the room, and I was hardly listening when she started speaking in these platitudes about how we had all competed so bravely and how such a difficult decision it was going to be. And even as a 5-year-old, I just knew that this was my mom just saying nice things so my friends didn't cry while I enjoyed the delicious sugary jewels of my conquest. The moment came, and she announced, the winner of the dance contest is Neatwood Bell. I know. I stood there gaping. I couldn't believe it. My mother was on the take. The fix I had was like the 1919 Black Sox scandal all over again. That very moment, I stopped believing in Santa Claus. I stopped believing in the Easter Bunny. I stopped believing in professional wrestling. My third, fifth birthday party, ladies and gentlemen, is the day that I became a man. Right after I cried like a baby. I just could not believe it. I couldn't understand how she could make such an egregious decision as to allow Neatwood Bell, my dance contest. How would she see me dance? Not just dance, but change the definition of dance in one 4-minute burst of glory. And there was Dumbo Neatwood Bell winning my dance contest. That very day, I hung up my dancing shoes. I swore off jelly beans and I got my first tattoo. it wasn't until years later when we were planning my 4th, 12th birthday party that I went to my mother and I said, Mom, how could you make such an unbelievable decision as to award Neatwood Bell my jelly beans? And she just looked at me and said, Dan, Neatwood was having a hard time. His brother had just been in a car accident, and he danced his heart out, and it was your birthday. You already had all these gifts. You didn't need any more prizes. I never did dance again, and I've since developed an aversion to Michael Jackson. But my mother's gift to me for my 5th birthday was a better understanding of the word fair. And for me, that has been worth all the jelly beans in the world. Thank you.
Our 5th contestant, Donnie Crandall. Try it backwards. Try it backwards, Donnie Crandall.
Do you ever forget your keys, wallet, or cell phone? Me too. Well, I don't forget yours, but mine. It all started in elementary school when I constantly came home without my jacket, homework, or bag of marbles. Mom would be standing in the kitchen, soup ladle in her hand on her hip, glaring. You forgot your jacket at school again, didn't you? Son, you are so scatterbrained. I didn't forget about the fishing trips with Dad. I'd get our tackle box organized, dig up worms for bait, watch fishing shows on TV to prepare. Fish on. Mom again. Son, all you think about is fishing. I swear you have a one-track mind. For the life of me, I couldn't figure out how I could be scatterbrained and have a one-track mind. Had I lost my marbles? Or were my wires simply crossed? Either way, it probably explains why I try so many things backwards. Fellow Toastmasters and friends, trying things backwards can actually make life more memorable and way more fun. Just ask my parents. They'll tell you about a time they took my sister and me to see our grandparents. As Dad drove us down that familiar dirt road that led to Grandma's house, which was not the yellow brick road or the pathway to success, he suddenly stopped the car. Okay, you two, who's first? Every time we visit your grandparents, you act up, and we spank you on the way home. Today, we're going to spank you before you misbehave. Yes, this whipping is for what you're going to do wrong. We're trying it backwards. Now you know where I get it from. That was way before timeout and positive reinforcement. After Mom and Dad's preemptive strike, we got that proverbial, kids, that hurt us more than it hurt you. You know what? They lied. They never shed a tear, had to rub their rear end or lost their privileges after they spanked us. No, they were proud of themselves for creating a family memory and trying something backwards. Have you ever tried something backwards? Done something backwards? Maybe it's time to order dessert before your meal. My wife and I were dining at a fancy Italian restaurant. The waiter, older gentleman, gray hair combed straight back, made his way to our table. Good evening. Can I get the two of you started with something? Yes, please. My wife would like some panna cotta, and I'd like some spumoni. Excuse me, sir. You want to order dessert before your meal? Yes, sir. Life's uncertain, you know. I see. That's a splendid idea. That was the only time that waiter smiled all night. Who would have thought trying something backwards could put a smile on the face of an uptight waiter working in a fancy Italian restaurant? Maybe it's time to be nice to the police officer after you've signed the speeding ticket. I was the passenger, my buddy Doug was the driver. After Doug signed the $326 speeding ticket, he looked at the officer and said, "Sir, I apologize for speeding. I totally respect what you do, and I really appreciate you keeping the roads safe." Who says that after a $300 speeding ticket? If it had been me, I might have been half that nice until I got rode up. Then it would have been a different story. The officer went back to his car. Doug pulled away from the curb and began to merge us back into traffic when, to our utter astonishment, that officer lit us up a second time and pulled us back over. I looked at Doug and said, "He liked your compliment so much he's going to write us up for something else so he can get some more." The officer walked up to the driver's side window and said, "Let me have that ticket." He ripped the ticket up in little pieces, handed the wad of paper back to Doug. This happened on McHenry Avenue, Modesto, California. And he said to Doug, "Thanks for respecting me, young man." Trying something backwards, like being nice instead of mean, actually respecting a police officer instead of criticizing him, could get you out of a ticket. I doubt it, but it could. It worked for Doug. It could save your life. A couple other tips on trying things backwards. Why not have your memorial service before you pass away? That way you get to see who shows up, hear what people have to say, correct any exaggerations. And the next time you're the joke master at your Toastmasters Club, laugh hysterically before you give the punchline. If your joke's not funny, they'll laugh at you. Fellow Toastmasters and friends, if parents can discipline their kids before they misbehave, and you can order your dessert before your meal, then I can take the conclusion of my speech and try it backwards. Yes, I was encouraged. Donnie, set yourself apart from other speakers. Try something different. That may have been a bad idea, because I can't see the time clock right now. I should have just fallen on my face, but that's been tried before. Some of you are worried about me right now. Trust me, this hurts me more than it hurts you. And at least you get to see a completely different side of me. And I get a brand new perspective. And that, my friends,